Retro Now.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are ending this week, as we almost always do, with the discussion of recent Star Wars news. Specifically, we're going to be getting into the teaser trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu. Before we dive into that, Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
This is the way to find us. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, we are now broadcasting to the galaxy, and this is the way. Yeah, this is our news episode, but we are pretty much going to devote the entire episode to the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu key art and teaser trailer, which came out at the beginning of the week, which is funny because we were just talking on the news a couple weeks ago when they released that teaser image for Star Wars Starfighter Fighter, how we had more teaser imagery for that movie coming out in 2027 than we did for The Mandalorian and Grogu, and they put an end to that by giving us the key art and the teaser trailer. So I think we kind of manifested that one, Jay.
That's right. We did indeed.
So I was just surprised it was a Monday drop. That's not usually when these type of things come out. It seems like it's always like a Tuesday or the end of the week, or this just caught me off guard. But how about you?
Yeah, and there was a little bit of buzz. I know that people were saying, oh, it's going to come out any day, any day. And then for a Monday drop, it's definitely a fun way to start the week, though. Not complaining, that's for sure.
Yeah. So let's start with the key art / poster, which you can find over on starwars.com. It's real easy to find right now if you're listening to this concurrently with, instead of in the future. But it is a poster that to me kind of feels like a blend between something you'd expect from Drew Struzan and something maybe out of like the golden era of Hollywood, with the way they'd like splash like the title and when it's going to be in theaters and who's in this movie. It says starring Pedro Pascal as Din Djarin and Grogu as himself on it. It mentions the name of stars, and like as opposed to like putting them all in the little block text at the bottom here. But what do you think about the style before we get into the details here?
No, I think you nailed it with that description of the morphing there. But I love the fact that, as we know, The Mandalorian and Grogu just in general has that old West feel and the, Saturday morning cereal type things. And this is just so indicative of that. And as you mentioned with the old Hollywood, the lettering itself and just the feeling of it and the look of it, it's definitely something that you would have seen, on a marquee for a theater back in, the 1960s, 1950s. And I just think it's perfect. And the colors and everything are perfect. The movement that it's showing is perfect on here.
Right. So some of these details will spill over into our teaser discussion as well. But I kind of talked about the style. The Mandalorian and Grogu is not written in a Star Wars font. I mean, the letters are vaguely Arabic, but they're wavy. They're not the classic yellow outline type letters that we're used to seeing. And then they've got that script, only in theaters, May 22nd, written across that. But just kind of working our way from the top of the poster to the bottom. In the upper left corner, we've got a new Razor Crest, which is decorated with yellow lines, being flanked by a couple of X-Wings. So coming out of the last two celebrations, there's been a Mandalorian and Grogu sizzle reel that's made its way around. You and I have had the opportunity to see it with links that have been shared to us from people who have taken unauthorized video of these things. And we knew that there was some sort of a new Razor Crest showing up. And here it is. Of course, we have absolutely no idea how Din Djarin got his hands on the new Razor Crest. But you excited to see that, or would you rather him gone back with the N1?
I'm a little ambivalent, quite honestly. I mean, it's such a great feeling to see a Razor Crest again because obviously that was what we were first introduced to, and that kind of goes synonymous with who Din Djarin was at the time. But I mean, the fact that he lost it and then he had the N1, I mean, the N1 was then synonymous with him. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of fun to be able to resurrect the Razor Crest in that way. It's kind of emotionally satisfying and a little nostalgic at the same time. But it's also, I don't know, I hate to call it fan service, but it kind of feels like that in a little bit of a way, but he did need a larger ship. So, I mean, I guess there is that. I mean, the N1 is only so big.
Yeah, story wise, I think what saves it is that when we got to the Book of Boba Fett and season 3 of The Mandalorian, he was telling Pelimoto he wanted a new Razor Crest. He
Mhm.
tasked her with finding a new Razor Crest, and that's not what she came up with. She came with the N1. But yeah, it's a Mandalorian ship. I'm glad to see he's got it there. There's nothing wrong with the N1, and I think they made it even cooler than it was in the Phantom Menace with the way he used it. But I don't know. I'm just kind of glad to see this. I think it's a better ship for him and Grogu. It makes more sense for someone who's going to be bounty hunting. He has someplace
Mhm.
to, in fact, put his bounties on the ship, and it's also his mobile home when it comes to that.
Right,
So
right.
I think it works better for a bounty hunter in that regard. Skipping to another part of the poster, things that are back in the middle right hand side of the poster, we've got the Mandalorian staring down some creature, but he's got a new pulse rifle in his hands, which we have not seen since the end of season 2 when it was aboard the Razor Crest when it got blown up.
Right.
So I, I'm more excited for that than I actually think I am for the return of the Razor Crest because he's just been wandering around with a pistol for the longest time. But it was that pulse rifle was so cool in the first season and a half of the show.
Oh, it really was, and the fact that they pilfered that from the Christmas special, the holiday
Uh-huh.
special, made it even better. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm with you. That's such a great ad.
yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with that. Of course, in the middle upper portion of the poster, we've got Din Djarin and Grogu. I don't know if there's really anything noteworthy there, kind of the way we're used to seeing them. But then there is an AT-AT to the right of them, and it's kind of that style that is in between what we saw in The Empire Strikes Back and then the AT-ATs we got to see in The Last Jedi.
Mhm.
But you know, AT-ATs are always welcome as far as I'm concerned.
Heck yeah.
We get a look at Sigourney Weaver in her unnamed role. There'll be a little bit more about that when we get to the teaser. But if we had any doubt, which we didn't, that she was going to be in the movie, there she is. Any thoughts?
Oh, just seeing Sigourney Weaver is just great seeing her represented on here.
Yeah. Below her is Grogu again with his Anzellan friends. So if you know what an Anzellan is, think Babu Frick from The Rise of Skywalker. And of course, we got to see them in the third season of The Mandalorian. They rebuilt IG-11. I don't know. I'm curious about them. We'll have more thoughts when we get to the trailer here, but they are just kind of a fun addition.
They are. I don't think they needed to add Grogu twice on this poster, though, quite honestly. I'm not
Yeah, they
sure
could
why
just
they
had the
had to do
Anzellans
that.
there. I don't know why
Right.
they decided to put him twice, but then again, Din Djarin's on the poster 3 times.
True. That's
So
true. Little action shots here and there.
right. To their right is Garazeb Aurelius, better known as Zeb from Rebels,
Yes.
and we got a shot of him in the Mandalorian as well. And we're going to see a bit more of him. And when we get to the trailer, I'm excited for this. I don't know. It's it was such a cool surprise when we got to see him in the Mandalorian on New Adelphi base, but giving him what I hope is a bigger role in the movie is going to be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I am so here for this. And I mean, just the fact that he's on the poster is a definite, point in the right direction for that. I think he's going to have a much bigger role. And that's such a great tie-in to Rebels. So excited.
Agreed, agreed. And then to the right of them is we already talked about the Mandalorian kind of crouching down with the pulse rifle. but he's also on the AT-RT, which is the two-legged smaller walker that we got to see for the first time in Revenge of the Sith. If there was ever a walker made for Din Djarin, it's got to be the AT-RT. That just like suits his style perfectly.
Yes, it's very rancorish, but in
Yeah.
a very, machine sort of way.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to that episode of the Clone Wars where Mace Windu and what do they call them? The squadron, when they're on Ryloth and they're pinned down by the separatists and they go charging off with those things.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, that was such a cool scene for those walkers, and we've got to see in the sizzle reel, which is not part of this teaser coming up, Din Djarin riding on that and going down the side of a mountain. So I'm super excited to see that in the movie. Last detail from the poster before we get into the teaser trailer is I'm assuming those are the Hutt twins from the Book of Boba Fett. What do you think?
I'm not really sure because there's no distinguishing marks really that I can tell. And I want to say that they had some jewelry or some distinguishing tattoos, but maybe that comes later too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just my thought on that is that we get to see another Hutt in the teaser, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this is kind of how the twins, Jabba's cousins, were huddled up when we saw them in the Book of Boba Fett. So maybe it's a red herring, but that's where my mind went, is that these had
Hmm.
to be the same too. Could be, could not. We'll find out.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, well, on to the main event, and that is the teaser trailer. And so it's about a minute and a half long, and it doesn't really tell us what the story is, but I think there's a number of things that we can deduce from it as we go through it here. Starting off with, we got the Razor Crest, the new one, flying alongside a beach. And based on later scenes, I think that's on New Adelphi, the new Adelphi planet, where the New Republic has got that base set up. But what is your thought on that?
Oh gosh, I didn't have one because
Mhm.
there's so many different places in Star Wars that could potentially be. So I didn't have any one specific thought in mind, quite honestly, but I like your theory of the new Adelphi base.
Okay. Well, then from there, we've got Mando and Grogu, kind of perched down behind a dune, and then Grogu is playing with a rifle scope. And what follows that is a shot as seen through like binocs of some Imperial stormtroopers standing in front of a building. I can't tell if that's really what we're supposed to be seeing from Grogu's perspective or something else. But as far as I'm concerned, just kind of Mando and Grogu perched there is kind of a cute scene. I mean, Mando is all business, and I kind of feel like Grogu's playing around. But what do you think?
Yeah, probably a little bit. And I have to say that I feel like Grogu really has grown into a little bit more of an adept fighter,
Uh-huh.
and as we've seen throughout the teaser, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but I loved how Star Wars said Grogu doing Grogu things, but yet he's gonna have, I think, a much more active role as a partner, not just a co-traveler this time with Din.
Well, right. And when season 3 of The Mandalorian ended, the armorer sent Din Djarin and Din Grogu off for him to complete his journeys as part of his training there. So I think that's kind of the point of all of this,
Mhm,
is that
mhm,
it's expected of Grogu that he's going to participate more going forward on this. I don't know if there's anything to be said about that building that the stormtroopers are in front of, because we really have no idea what it is.
mhm.
They don't give us enough detail there. There's two big things going on in this trailer, and it has to do with the Empire in one sense, and then, or what's left of it, and then the Hutts in another. So we'll find out.
Yeah.
Uh, the following scene is we got one of these Anzellans and Grogu walking through a drainage pipe or a sewer. It's a little unclear, and there's not a whole lot of detail for us to go by there. But did you have any thoughts?
Not really, just other than the fact that, they're both little and they can fit into these precarious kind of places, and so they're probably doing some sort of spy work.
Right. And then we get a big moment where we are introduced to Sigourney Weaver. She has no dialogue in this teaser trailer, but she's sitting in a base are sitting in a booth, which I think is at New Adelphi base, based on a few things that we could see in the background, and then another scene later in the teaser. The rank badge that she has indicates that she's a general, and she kind of looks up at the Mando and Grogu as they sit down. Grogu tries to use the Force to pull over her little tray of snacks, and then she puts her hand down on it to stop him. So kind of a cute little moment there. But what are your thoughts on the introduction of Sigourney Weaver's character in that regard?
Yeah, that was good. I mean, she does not need any dialogue to have gravitas in this particular little piece here. And you can tell that she's all about business. I mean, she's got that data pad in front of her and she's analyzing things, but she's got that air about her that she is a leader and that she is someone that you have to reckon with if you want to get anything done.
Yeah, and what's also fun is that, I can't remember how long ago it was, but we talked a little bit about a interview that she did, and she was talking, confirming that she was doing this role. And she basically said that, while she wasn't up on everything that was going in Star Wars, one of the things that drew her in was this Grogu character. So
Mhm.
here she is getting her first scene with him. So that's followed by the Lucasfilm Limited title card, which we naturally come to expect. And then we've got a shot where we're looking at a puddle and there's a city reflected in it, and then someone steps through it, which I'm assuming is Din Djarin, but I'm not certain. I was trying to read the Arabesh that was reflected in the puddle. Most of it is too blurry, but one of the signs does read spice.
Nice.
So that could literally be anywhere, but considering how much of the huts we see and later part, excuse me, how much of the huts we see in the later part of this teaser, I'm wondering if it isn't like Nal Hutta or Nar Shaddaa or something like that. I mean, that's pure speculation on my part, but what do you think?
Mhm. No, I think that's a great guess because those are very famous worlds for spice running and the like. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then the Mandalorian gets to kick someone over a bar. Fantastic. I didn't really notice anything in the background. Did you?
No, other than just the fun colors of some of the alcohol.
Yeah, there you go.
Very
All
colorful.
kinds of new Star Wars cocktails for us to imagine
Yeah, there you
later, or for
go.
maybe the film debut at Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge.
Nice, yeah.
We get to see Grogu jump on the Mandalorian's shoulder. And then we are at a different scene, which looks like they're back in the sewers. And we see an Amani emerging from the water. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, this is a character type. The species is called a monomenon. Amana man. Nomenon. Okay.
Amanamanapia?
Yeah. I was thinking the Muppets. But at any rate,
Nice.
one of these,
Amanaman.
yeah, first showed up in Jabba's palace. And then, in a way, they kind of were like a model for the droidicas. The way they just kind of have that, they're very flat and curved body type of thing, and they featured in some various Star Wars comics. One of the, I want to say Tales of the Empire or something like that, where was that lieutenant that was left in charge of an Imperial squad that they had to fight these things off, and it was a disaster. But that's just kind of one of the things I always appreciate about Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau is they go for those deep cuts from the movies and bring back these characters that we saw in, for a second on screen, whatever, but that diehard Star Wars fans have come to love and embraced like all of the mythology that comes up around these characters. But even if you don't recognize it, you don't have to. It's not important to
Mhm.
understand what that character came from.
Yeah, it's very, very much in universe, but I have to say, I'm always so impressed with your memory and where you pull these things out because that's, I've seen it before, but I could not have told you where exactly. But I think you're right. It doesn't matter. It's very Star Wars-esque. And even though not everyone will get the reference, they certainly get the vibe.
Right. Right. Well, then we get a shot of Din inside the cockpit of the Razor Crest. He revs up the engines, the ship dives, and it's pursued by something, and I couldn't tell exactly what it was. One of the times I watched, I thought he was being pursued by droid starfighters, the Vulture crafts, and another time I thought it was TIE interceptors. But it's so fast, and when I paused it, I couldn't get a great shot. What did you think they were?
Oh gosh, it was like you said, it was so fast. It was hard to even get anything much more than a blur. So I don't have any posturings at all on that. But I think vultures or tire interceptors are both really good guesses,
Well, and there's
given,
other stuff that
what's going
happens.
on.
Yeah, there's other stuff that happens later in this trailer. It could make it either one and it make
Hmm.
complete sense. But so this is followed up with a shot of Grogu swimming in the sewers again. I don't know there's too much to say about that other than he's swimming with the little frog-like legs that he and Yoda have. I suspect he'd be very good at it. And then we get a really wonderful shot. And this is Zeb fighting a stormtrooper and swinging his bow rifle while bouncing off the wall. It
Oh, so
is,
good.
you cannot pause it and get any great detail, but it is unmistakably Zeb.
Oh yeah. And it's glorious because
Hmm.
we know what kind of havoc Zeb can wreak, and he is definitely doing that here
Right.
in
And we
such
know
a
they're going to have
glorious
to use a
way.
lot of CGI to make that character. So
Mhm,
really eager to see how else he comes off over the course of that movie.
mhm.
Then we have Grogu and the Anzellans on some sort of speeder. Grogu's ears are flapping in the wind. Kind of a cute little moment.
Uh-huh.
Followed by Mando flying up to a U-wing. So he's got his jetpack on and he flies up to like one of the best cut U-wings we've ever seen. I mean, I'm used to these
Yeah,
U-wings always being like all grungy from the
right?
Rebellion era.
Good point, good point. Yeah, this was pretty spiffy.
Uh-huh. And then we get some scenes that tie together here, and I think they're kind of getting into one of the story or the plot lines of the movie here and now. So we got a crowd cheering, and then we see the back of what looks like a very muscular Hutt lifting his arms up in what appears to be an arena, and everyone's reporting that that's Rhoda the Hutt, so Stinky from the Clone Wars movies, and he's being voiced by the Bears' Jeremy Allen White, and that's been reported all over the place that he was going to be doing the voice for Rhoda there. And I'm going to give a couple different scenes so we can kind of talk about this all in a row. And then we've got Mando and Grogu seated in the crowd, and like one of the few lines of dialogue in the whole thing, the Mandalorian says, "Impressive," and Grogu goes to back to munching on his snack, which looks like the Mantel mix popcorn
It
from
does,
Galaxy's
yes.
Edge. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then right, so we get this, and then over the course of the rest of this teaser, this is the way. They put up in big letters across the screen, and we get a couple different scenes here that all seem to be tied to this. We got the Mandalorian fighting some sort of mech droids in front of a door that has the Jabba's clan symbol on it, and then he's fighting a Savrit from the Dejarik table. And at one point, he's behind. He's got his like pulse rifle up against his throat. And okay, so let's just focus those kind of like what appear to be Hut arena scenes here. What's your takeaway from all that?
Well, first of all, muscular and hut don't typically go together, but in this case, it does.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think it's gotta be Rada the Hutt, and because we've been teased about that so much, but I just think it's interesting that a Hutt would be fighting in the arena themselves, but it makes me wonder if there's a specific familial reason why they are, as opposed to being in the audience and spectating and over all of it, which is what they typically do. So I thought that was a very interesting way to show that hut there. But yeah, I mean just the whole fighting, it goes by so fast,
yeah.
but there's just so much great action in here and just seeing that pulse rifle and then the action, like you said, the jarg table, so good.
So some thoughts on Rhoda. We don't know for a fact that he's even fighting in the arena. He just may be there, making announcements or celebrating. Possibly he's fighting. Hard to say. But when we're talking about muscular huts, the one that came to mind was from the comics. Which were relaunched in 2015 on Nar Shaddaa was a very ripped Hulk known Gracchus the Hutt, and he
Right.
ran the arena there. And so when we
Uh-huh.
were trying to figure out earlier where that city is, again, pure speculation on our part, you know, Gracchus got sent off. He was captured by the Empire and sent off to a world that had like a really oppressive gravity. What if Rhoda took it over? What if he's the
Oh,
replacement? So, I mean, just a thought, speculation on my
yeah.
part, but
I like it.
that with the spice sign and everything else, that could be a possibility there. And then the other thing is that those kind of mech looking like droids there. I love those things. They remind me a bit of some of the stuff we got to see in Jedi Survivor. When Cal Kestis is captured and thrown into the arena, there's various droids and stuff around and various bounty hunter droids that come after him and the like. So
Yes.
that was kind of cool. And as an aside, we kind of commented on a minute ago when we talked about the Amani alien that's there. I really like how they are leaning into a lot of the classic stuff here, as opposed to inventing a whole batch of new aliens again that we got to see with like all the Disney era movies. They're doing what The Mandalorian did, and that's kind of like lean into the familiar. We don't need another new race here. Give us the stuff that we've seen before, and they make it unique, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. And I know we've talked about that several times, that's one of the definite things that we appreciated about the series in and of itself is that it's got that nostalgia factor.
Mhm.
But yeah, because you really don't need all those new aliens. Not necessarily saying that that's
Well,
not a good thing, but, it's nice to have the familiar and the
yeah, I'm
classic.
not opposed to getting the new ones, but
Sure.
I want you to blend them in with the old stuff more
Right.
than what they do. All right. Well, then we get a pretty cool like capstone scene here, and that is the Mandalorian and Grogu launching out of the cockpit of an AT-AT right before it blows up and falls over the side of a snowy cliff. And it was the third AT-AT in a row of them, like kind of walking on this ridge here. And I referenced that scene from the Clone Wars where Mace and the clones get in the ATRTs and go charge against the battle droids. It's
Oh,
the same
yeah.
type of thing there. Those ATTEs were on like a ridge path on the side of a mountain taking fire. And then, and now I got the AT-ATs like walking along the same type of path on the ridge of the cliff.
Mhm.
And, he sabotages this one. Now, in the sizzle reel, we got to see a whole lot more of that scene. But this was just cool. It's so much fun getting to see him in action this way.
Oh, for sure. And I like this scene definitely because everything else is just so boom, 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 fast, fast, fast. And then it's almost like in slow motion that you
Yeah,
see that AT-AT just air AT-AT going off the side of the cliff. Love
indeed.
it.
Right. And then we get the Mandalorian and Grogu title card of the statement that it's been forged for IMAX. So I'm definitely going to have to find an IMAX theater to go see this at some point next year.
Yes.
And then the little final scene that we got here is again in the sewers. Some one-eyed creature rat type thing rears up its face and snarls at Grogu, who turns around and shoots it with a little pink ball right in the eye. And then that Anzellan says, "Good job, baby," as they wander off. So I think made us laugh because that same Anzellan was bad baby was what he was saying to Grogu in season
Right.
3 there. So and then of course they let us know it's coming in May 2026. So I for me this is an A plus on this teaser. I didn't feel like we really learned the details of the story. We didn't need to, but we got enough scenes and cool aliens and starfighting and all that stuff to get us excited. But how about you?
Oh, yeah, it's just enough of a tease, like you said, we don't need a whole lot of detail. I know I personally don't want a whole lot of detail, I wanna be surprised, I wanna experience it in the theater, and yeah, we're gonna get a few more, of course, between now and then, obviously, and it's going to give us a little bit more of a peek into the keyhole sort of thing, but this was enough, and it's got me so excited because one of the things that it truly makes me feel is that Mando and Grogu truly are a team. I mean, they seem very symbiotic in this. As you pointed out, when Grogu jumps onto Din's shoulder in the bar, afterwards, it's almost like an invisible magnet just, and they don't
Yeah,
have to speak to know that it's this, just the way that they do things. This is the way. And they're just such a great team. They're very symbiotic in that way. Love it.
agreed. And then the last detail is that the page on StarWars.com that shared the teaser trailer has confirmed that Ludwig Göransson is going to be composing the music. So I was excited by that. We got to
Yes.
hear
Yes.
a little bit of that music throughout the trailer. So yeah, good stuff. This is really fantastic. I'm excited for this. I'm with you. I don't need all the story details. I just, for the fun of it, like to see some of the hype train ramped up a little bit. just to continue to give us these things to talk about and look forward to. But yeah, of course, we're going to go see the movie even if they don't give us anything more. But we all know there's another trailer coming at some point. So we'll look out for that.
Indeed.
All right. Well, then that'll do it. That is our look at the Mandalorian and Grogu teaser trailer. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Podcast Stardust as we shared this week's news. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the show on your podcatcher of choice. And then do us a great favor by rating and reviewing the show. That'll help others find the shows. That powers the algorithm somehow, some way. Don't know. Just know that's the way it works. And if you want to find more shows on beyond what you're going to get on your podcatcher of choice, head over to retrozap.com. The entire catalog of 943 previous shows are there, as well as some other great shows on the network, such as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files and Manicast. Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, and Superhero Suite are all pretty active at the moment. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online?
Yeah, I would love to. So we are on Facebook and Instagram very conveniently at Podcast Stardust. And we also have all of our Pinterest boards for all kinds of fun things for everything Star Wars. And we have our 2 YouTube outlets. So you can find us on the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out with all of your friends. And then we also have our TeePublic store where you can pick up one of 7 different show logo designs, or all 7 if you so desire, of Podcast Stardust goodness on everything from t-shirts and sweatshirts to coffee mugs and home goods and pretty much everything in between. So once again, the link to that is in our show notes. And if you do happen to pick something up, we thank you in advance because all of those purchases do help to support the show.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we are beginning our look at the new Lego series, Rebuild the Galaxy Pieces of the Past. We'll be discussing episode 1. And then on Wednesday, we've got a great discussion of Sanctuary, a Bad Batch novel by Lamar Giles. That make sure you want to join us for that. So thanks for listening to episode 944 Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be